North Carolina has an obsession with building freeways. Although most of the country has moved on from building large freeways everywhere, North Carolina is still drafting new interstate plans all the time. Today we'll look at the new routes, what they do or don't accomplish, and how they will impact the state. First, we'll start with the projects concerning primary roads, the two-digit interstates. I'll explain these a bit more briefly. In order of number, first is I-42 in the eastern part of the state. It goes east and southeast of Raleigh through Goldsboro, Kinston, New Bern, and Havelock before ending at Morehead City. It also passes by the largest marine air station in the world at MCAS Cherry Point, and would serve the second largest port in North Carolina behind Wilmington. Next is I-73, which starts at the South Carolina state line near Rockingham and travels north, going through a whole lot of nothing before passing through Asheboro and then hitting Greensboro. It follows the beltway through the west side of Greensboro before branching off and heading to the Virginia state line. I-73's plans are to connect to Roanoke, Virginia in the north and Myrtle Beach in the south. Further west on the state line is I-74, which starts there and briefly follows I-77 before branching off into Mount Airy. From there, it travels southeast and makes up the eastern half of the Winston-Salem Beltway. It then travels southeast through High Point before meeting with I-73 and follows it until Rockingham, where it branches back to the southeast for a while until it ends in Wilmington. It could instead end in Myrtle Beach if the NCDOT decided on this monstrosity of a route, but that's not going to happen. Lastly is I-87, which goes northeast of Raleigh through Rocky Mount and Elizabeth City before heading into Virginia towards the Hampton Roads metro area, roughly following US 64 and US 17. This one's been talked about for a while, but it hasn't really materialized yet, so it'll be a while. With those out of the way, we can now talk about the truckload of three-digit interstates North Carolina has planned out or is working on. First is I-226, a 56-mile route from I-26 near the South Carolina state line, heading east through Forest City and Shelby before ending in Kings Mountain, west of Charlotte. The idea here is for a freeway connection on the route from Asheville to Charlotte. The Shelby bypass is currently being constructed for this route, with a completion date in 2029. This route isn't exactly planned to be an interstate, though a bill to designate the route as a future interstate was introduced earlier this year by Representative Tim Moore. I couldn't find any mentions of a numbering for this route, so I just chose the one that makes the most sense. Next is I-777. This route would follow an existing freeway from Winston-Salem west to the town of Wilkesboro, not too far from App State University. Only a few minor upgrades are needed at shoulders and overpasses to allow this lucky numbered interstate to become a thing. Here's a quick reminder to bonk that subscribe button if you're enjoying this video. It's time to talk about the Winston-Salem bypass. North Carolina is currently constructing the eastern half of the bypass, with this small northern section currently open. The western half of the bypass is still in the planning stages from US 158 to US 52. The I-74 portion of the Beltway has a completion date in 2026, though the western part of the Beltway with the spur I-274 has no completion date currently. Sorry to all of you Beltway enthusiasts out there, there are no plans to complete the circle around Winston-Salem at this time. Not too far away is I-785, which is planned to be an interstate spur to the city of Danville, Virginia. Upgrades along US 29 need to happen before the full interstate can be signed, though I think it's funny that the route's only designation right now is a 7-mile stretch along the Greensboro Beltway that was recently completed in 2023. To the south of that is the future I-685, one of the newer plans for an interstate in North Carolina. It is planned to head southeast from Greensboro along US 421, passing through Sanford and meeting I-95 at Dunn. One look at the route should at least raise your eyebrow a little. First, Fayetteville is right there, why not go there? I guess going around Fort Bragg is tough, so no dice. Maybe it's intended as a Raleigh super bypass for I-40? But it doesn't even do that either. It would end at I-95 instead of extending another 6 miles to connect back to I-40. Want to learn the real reason for this route's plan designation? A Toyota super plant. So, not only is North Carolina copying Illinois with the amount of interstates they'll have, but they're also one-upping I-180 on bad reasons to build an interstate. If I-180 taught us anything, it's to not designate interstates because of a singular factory. But okay, North Carolina, go off with an 85-mile interstate for 6 people, the local Burger King, and a bunch of Toyota Corollas. Oh, and that's not even the worst part about this interstate. When Wilmington received the word about this route, they wanted an extension to Wilmington. I-40 is right there, Wilmington. What are you thinking, Wilmington? Anyway, we're now at I-540 in Raleigh. The northern half of this route is already signed, with the southern half being constructed and opening in stages. The small southeastern part has still not been cleared yet, but that doesn't stop a projected completion date in 2028. This route would give Raleigh a full-sized big boy beltway, similar to the ones in Charlotte and Atlanta. It would also be the third full beltway in the state after Charlotte and Greensboro. Now I'd quickly like to point out this behemoth of an intersection between I-40, I-42, and I-540 currently under construction south of Raleigh. If that's not America, then I don't know what is. Next is an extension of the new I-795 south of Goldsboro to I-40. To the 4 people heading from Wilmington to Goldsboro, congratulations. I mean, sure, it gives a more direct connection south from Wilson, Rocky Point, and Goldsboro towards Wilmington, but do we even need to desire path every interstate? Not too far away from that is I-587. The portion from Greenville to I-95 near Wilson was recently signed in 2022, and the rest of the route is a few overpass upgrades away from being signed as I-587 once regular I-87 can be signed along US 64. In other words, congrats to Mr. Beast for having your very own interstate.
Yay!
The last route today is I-295 in Fayetteville. This one is nearing completion, expected to be complete next year in 2026. It goes directly by Fort Bragg, giving one of the largest military installations in the US easy access to I-95 and the rest of the interstate system. Shout out to all the Fayettevilleans watching for living in a hilariously lopsided city. Now, after all of these interstate routes across North Carolina, there's still something missing. A route to Jacksonville, North Carolina. I mean, everyone and their grandma has plans for an interstate in North Carolina, but none go to Jacksonville. My guess is that the Camp Lejeune settlement ad scared the interstate plans away. So what does so many interstates do to a state? It's quite simple. It makes driving easier and walking harder. As a result, North Carolina is the least walkable state on average based on walk scores. Heck, it's so bad that 6 out of the bottom 15 cities in walkability are from North Carolina. With even more interstates being thrown up around the state, don't expect those numbers to rise anytime soon. More interstates means more people on the road and more sprawl. But until someone can prove that large-scale economic growth can happen without freeways, urban sprawl, and gas guzzlers, America's freeway craze will live on. If you want to learn about the other Carolina, watch this video about Myrtle Beach's population problem. Also, this video by Mileage Mike goes into more depth about these routes and includes some bonus routes that I didn't talk about if you're more interested. Now, have a good one, y'all.